started.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I didn't know what would happen during the day, and so I had to prepare something in case of. And so I'll try to do that in a way that actually tries to link to the things we were discussing here. Certain things might well go wrong, and you're welcome to interrupt me anytime. Either if it goes too wrong or if it actually hits something that you have an interest in. So I have two versions of the talk. One is the very short one. It doesn't have text, just images, and so I'll let that sink in on you for a moment, and you can think about how these images relate to data quality in Wikidata, just for a moment, and then I'll give my version of it. I actually presented this to my kids, and they came up with their own versions of what this might actually mean. Okay, so first one is basically in terms of questions. Shall we predetermine all the structures that we allow to be built on Wikidata? That's kind of the first one. Second, should we just let things grow naturally and then just come in to check manually from time to time? Next one, should we strive for perfection? And can we define perfection? Or the alternative is, should we just take whatever comes in our way? Or the middle one is really nice. Should we wait for structure to emerge naturally? So this is a rotating ice sheet. It was media of the day yesterday on Commons. And here, or are we shooting ourselves into the foot with, especially to note this snail came in via automated methods. Or here, mapping between Wikidata and the outside world. Or here, duplicate detection. Or this one is basically when you propose a property and then nothing happens on that discussion page, right? So these are all kinds of things that might go wrong. That's the short version of my talk, and I think it resonated somehow. Now I'm going to try something else where I basically take the idea of data quality and apply it to the workflows of mostly people, but to some extent bots that are actually doing the edits. We're taking into account all the things that we've discussed on a more theoretical level today. So for a workflow, it's very important that we're working on a living system, more or less. That heart is supposed to continue beating, both the heart of Wikidata, but also the heart of that particular person or bot, whatever definition of heart you're using for that. We're working on a system that's constantly changing, that's active, so we don't want to break things too much, so that we always want to be able to reanimate it. And yeah, one approach I've taken here is to basically look at what Wikidata knows about this event. Very naive, right? You can go, all these images are linked. So yeah, if you look at the item, it's not very impressive. And yeah, looks just like any other item. Of interest is, well, title, yeah, constraint violations, we were just talking about them. It makes sense that workshops have a title, right? But right now, Wikidata is not aware that this is kind of a right thing to do. So probably we need to add another exception to the constraint, to constraints, right? While you're sitting there, you can actually do that. So that's the kind of glasses or the viewpoint perspective that I'll try to take on for the remainder of this talk. Let's just look around what we see, and then whenever we see something wrong, let's see whether we can do something about it. Okay, now I'm going to Scholia. If you don't know it, it's basically just the front end for Wikidata. It pulls together information not just from one item, but also from related items by basically Sparker queries that are canned, that are predetermined. And yeah, so here, for instance, you see the people that are participating in the workshop, some co-authors stuff. Well, Lydia is not actually here. We can fix that as well. Topic scores. Yeah. So the workshop about Wikidata and data quality, thankfully, actually has Wikidata and data quality as the two main topics of publications that participants have published? Well, first, kind of, it's just a reasonability or a soundness proof. If the two topics here were too dissimilar from Wikidata and data quality, then that would be a hint that the data is not very good. But here, at least, it's not too bad. Then, yeah, other things that are not so relevant. Oh yeah, interesting, related events might be very useful later on. So if further events are being organized on this topic, then this event should show up so that they are actually becoming aware of what we've done, especially if we document it properly. And then, yeah, related events through people and so on. So now that we have identified these two topics as the main topics that here we have written about, then we can compare them. In Scholia, we can compare them. So we look at the view for comparing two topics. And here we see another problem. Here, list of works. Somehow, the workshop ends up in a query that is looking for a list of works. And so we have a white field there. Because there is no publication date for this event, because this event is not a publication. So again, data modeling issue. Either we should ask for different types of dates here, or we should check what the relationship between events and works is somewhere in the ontology. I actually didn't dig into that one. It's just, it's odd to have a white spot there. Yeah, so then, yeah, we also notice that if people have published on one topic much more in general than on the other, then this will flood this this lower table here, so that's not very useful to us at the moment. Yeah, I actually left some more comments here. So Recoin was the only work listed here. Yeah, but if you look at that particular, the entry for that particular publication, it's not very useful because the citation graph is missing. So again, a data completeness issue. I'll not go into that, but the links are here. Then now we can look at the profiles for the individual two topics, Wikidata and data quality. So let's do Wikidata first. First, we notice in the related topics, 1995 pops up, 1985. Well, that's not something I would have expected to pop up as related to Wikidata, at least not in like top 10 things. So maybe this hints at some data incompleteness things worth looking at. Recent publications, the second one just has the tag Wikidata, even though the title is much longer. And so probably we can do the topic tagging in a bit more detail. Publications per year is actually quite nice. So first it shows the development that the topic has increased. Second is it is a nice mix of publications. So it's not just one kind of publication dominating all the rest. It's a mix. Yeah, authors, this also kind of makes sense. The authorship network is already interesting, but you notice there are some islands here, which either means that we have incomplete annotation of the authorship, could well be, or that there are opportunities to collaborate. So we could look out who these people are, whether we know them, whether we find a way to look at what they have done to get in contact and so on. Yeah, same for the co-occurring topics. This doesn't look very complete, but on the other hand, it's not a topic that has seen huge amounts of publications. And what's interesting, if we look at the map, some of the topics that co-occur with Wikidata, they have a geolocation. And here, just one in Vienna, of all places. But the thing is, it's actually correct. So there is a paper on Wikidata and tram lines in Vienna. Boom, pops up. And so that's yet another, if you don't know about this paper, or that's just another way of reaching out. And it takes just basically seconds to scroll through such a profile, and unless you have someone like me talking it over. Then also we notice here in the venues and series publishing, there's no journal. So the topic of Wikidata is not really a journal thing at the moment. And this is being talked about at conferences, at events. So in biophysics, basically journals are the thing where you publish in, and events, conferences, they just don't count, right? So for me, this is a strange beast. But in computer science, that's the normal. Then, yeah, citations, incomplete, and so on. Let's move on. So we had the two topics that were identified as the main topics. The other one is data quality. Okay, so now let's have a look at the profile for data quality. Here, you already see most of the papers are tagged with just one topic here. Data quality. So there's room for further annotation, which, if we do that, will enrich the co-occurring topics graph. The other one is, here we have a dominance of one publication type over the rest. So journal articles here, they dominate the rest. We have one erratum, or more, a few errata, which are basically just journal article types as well. We also notice in the author list, this list is dominated by people with ORCID, because that is data that we can harvest, so that's easier to ingest. So we have a bias. It's not as bad as was just outlined with ORCID, but still, yeah, there is a bias. The co-author graph has lots of islands, so somehow either the annotation in terms of authorship is incomplete, or there are, again, opportunities for collaboration. Yeah, co-occurring topics actually make sense. Quality control is something that's quite close to data quality. Statistics and so on, all of this makes sense. Citizen science came up as it did in the first keynote, where we were talking about crowdsourcing. And in a way, Wikidata is a citizen science project in the field of data science. And so yeah, we fit in. What is a bit odd is to have Malawi here on the top 10. I haven't dug into why this is, but this might hint at, again, this topic annotation graph not being very complete. I happen to have indexed the literature of or about Malawi, because that's not a lot, and so that was a nice test corpus. But literature about other topics hasn't been fully tagged, and you've seen on the first panel on this graph that lots of topic tags were just missing, and so this might well be just an artifact. Co-occurring topics, again, if it hasn't been fully annotated, the graph will not tell us much, but already the map has a lot of entries, so we have lots of points that we can start to engage with and look for collaborators, look for interesting findings, look how people are using or writing about, doing research about data quality in what contexts. Yeah, we also see the top author here, which we will get back to later on. We see this little missing link here that I will also come back to at some point. And then here, venues, we notice that it's basically journals. There's the LNCS, which tends to be for event reports, and there are here symposium proceedings, so there is a little bit of event reports, but the table is dominated by journals. So we're in a different field, basically, different culture. Yeah, citations, okay. Authors, highly cited authors, it's the same person actually. The one who has published most on the topic is also cited most. This is kind of a consistency check, makes sense. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but it makes sense. Okay, now we're going to look at this missing link. So for each topic in Wikidata, Scholia can show you some things that are missing. So here, for instance, we have missing author items. So these are author name strings that appear on papers or publications about the topic of data quality. And one thing to notice is there's someone named Catherine Ellen Bridson and someone named Kathy Ellen Bridson. These might well be the same people. So that is a starting point for further curation on this authorship and so on. Then we had noticed that the top venue for publications about data quality was this journal, Studies in Health, Technology and Informatics. And well, I don't know that journal, but it just popped up here. We notice here that some annotations in authorship is missing. Also, these here are also only annotated with one author, which is probably not correct, so others are missing. In terms of topics, well, ontology is not entirely unexpected. If we had data quality beforehand, interoperability, data sharing, data mining, this all kind of fits with the data quality that we had before. Author images, we notice here the top author with image has 3 publications in the journal. If you then scroll further down, we see the top author in the journal altogether has 27 publications, which means the top authors in the journal don't have images on commons, or at least not images associated with them on Wikidata. So we can go look for images of those people. Then, yeah, citations. This more or less looks normal. Here actually we have someone who's highly cited and doesn't have an ORCID. So the bias towards ORCID is not such that it quenches contributions by people who don't have an ORCID, but it is strong because most people still don't have an ORCID, and still they're quite prominent in what you see here on Scholia, and which reflects what is in Wikidata. Yeah, citation distribution, that could be a talk in and of itself. Very incomplete in Wikidata, but still it shows you something useful. Also, in the end, gender distribution. This just pops out because we've annotated the papers with the authors, and the authors are annotated with whatever gender they have. This venue, journal or event, they also have missing pages. So here again, we can look at the missing page for that one, and here we see 83 papers have this particular string, which basically means there is a lot of author annotation still to be done for publications on this particular that came out in this particular journal, which means that some of the visualizations we've seen above, they just are very rudimentary, and they will change in their nature once we do more of this annotation. Now, well, we had the top journal about data quality. Now we look at the top author. This person. Here we notice, for instance, there's the journal name is missing because this wasn't published in the journal, it was published on the preprint server, and the preprints apparently don't get indexed well enough on Wikidata. Authors, co-authors also looks a bit scarce, so there is more work to do here. Another preprint. Actually, those preprints here, in his case, they're all marked as being a preprint in the text, but not really in the structured data. Then the publication record here looks actually quite nice. Number of pages per year, yeah, number of pages, nobody really uses that. So that's an empty record, even though they've published a lot, presumably with pages. So that's an inconsistency kind of thing. Yeah, then here we see which journals, venues they publish in. We see the co-authorship graph, which looks like reasonably developed already, but probably, given the number of publications they have, should still be more. Then we see they don't just publish on data quality, they publish on other stuff as well, DNA methylation. Actually, it's a nice like jumping between data-related topics and medical topics. So this researcher is really working at the interface between data science and medicine. So first one is ontology, next one data quality, then osteoporosis, and type 2 diabetes mellitus. So this, yeah, medical data science, basically. In terms of images, we don't have an image of the person themselves. We have some people that are related to them, some other topics related to them. In the timeline, no employment, no awards pop up, so that's information that is missing. The academic tree is missing. We have one location. And yeah, citation statistics and citations per year look more or less okay. Yeah, again, for the author, we have a missing page, so let's have a look at that. For the author, actually, the missing page is a bit more complex, and here we see there are several different ways that Wikidata knows that this author name has been spelled. So it's 55 times it's spelled Simon de Lusignan. Here it's actually spelled with a typo, Lusignana, which is probably an A to indicate the affiliation or something like this. And here is a link to a tool that actually helps you disambiguate all those different strings and match them to the corresponding items. We can do the same for co-authors. And again, here we have 31 papers where someone named Tom Chan as a co-author hasn't been resolved. So this means that the co-author graph for this particular person is still quite incomplete. And if we do a bit of curation on these things, then we can make that the data for this person much more complete. Or people, or at least author name strings that are on papers that are citing works by this target author are also missing. So 101 papers by this Hugh Gallagher, or one or several persons named this way, who are citing our target person, have not been annotated as being written by this person. It's just a string here. So that's again calling for curation of the authors. Or here we have 171 papers by this target person where the topic hasn't been indicated. So again, a huge gap in the data for this person. Yeah, so this was basically just a rundown of the normal workflows of people that that work on Wikidata with a focus on WikiCite, because that's one of the projects I'm most active in. Now that we have all the things that we've discussed here today in mind, I would basically like to invite discussion, and in order to stimulate discussion a bit more, I have a few bonus pictures. So here, the first one is to signify that different parts of a complex system actually may well need different approaches to data management or data quality. Infrastructure and content need to actually be developed in tandem, as exemplified by these snails here, because if you have just one that is well developed and the other is not, then it just doesn't work. So they really have to develop together. There are lots of ruins here on Wikidata, either because someone made an import at some point and then didn't follow up, or because we changed our data model and haven't cleaned up after doing so. And also, it's very important to sometimes just change the perspective. And that's why it's important to have multiple people here in the room. So some people are data generators, others are data reusers, others are working more, let's say, on the wiki end with a more manual focus, and others are working on developing tools. And from each of these perspectives, data quality will look slightly differently. Then there's some metadata about this particular page and some further notes. So yeah, here's an interesting query that I think might be worth some discussion if we have time. Very important, one particular outcome of this event today is now there is a Wikidata, wiki project data quality that you can all sign up to. Yeah, we have the hashtag which we can use to continue the conversation. And yeah, now I'm inviting you to provide feedback, questions, comments on the basis of this talk or on the basis of what has been discussed today, especially with an eye of what should we be doing next. What should Wiki Project Data Quality do? Whether we should have similar workshops again, whether we should do that here, somewhere else. What are the next steps? Thanks.
Comments. Let's start a discussion. But so I thought you were going to say.
I can say something. No problem. So, what we would like to see actually.
You have to use the microphone, otherwise.
So you already introduced Wiki Project. So all of you just showed in 3 minutes, had 3 minutes time to talk a little bit about his or her project, and would be great to have this actually on the project page, that you add yourself to the project page if you would like to participate in this project somehow, yeah, at least be in the discussion or be in the loop, and also to add, yeah, whatever you think is relevant for this topic, so that we have, yeah, one page where we go if you would like to know what's going on Wikidata regarding data quality. So it would be great if you have a lively discussion on this page, so that we have one central resource for this.
Yeah, and if you're active in other Wikidata communities, then you can point them to this page.
Yeah, exactly. Just
because all existing communities, they do some sort of data quality activities, but they do it in their local context. And here we can try to bundle those contexts so that we can achieve better consistency across the corpus.
Check. Yeah. He's already going. Yeah.
One question, very nice presentation, thank you. Your focus was a bit on the scholarly data, where maybe one could argue that usually things are unambiguous, or maybe I'm overlooking things. Can you comment a bit how the issues you point out might transfer to another domain, let's say politicians or so, or celebrities, where we would have much more diverging opinions. So we talked about the reference issue before. It's probably not an issue in scholarly publications, or is it?
Well, it depends on the details. So first, in terms of disambiguation, the author names are as complex as you can imagine, and that's not different from the politicians or other people. You can have lots of John Smiths or Li or Wei Jiang or something like this, and that's complex and hard to disentangle. Also, there may well be dozens of scholarly articles with the same title, especially if it's a short title, and if we're indexing like many journals over many years. Then there are even journals with the same title, but which are different.
Yeah.
And then there are things that change their name. Also, we take into account things like affiliations. Universities change their name. They change their subdivisions all the time. And so it can get quite messy quite quickly. On the other hand, there are interactions with other fields like pop stars or so, because some pop stars actually have published scholarly papers. So I think Natalie Portman or someone like this, she has a paper in Neuroimage, and so there are overlaps, and then we can actually use that to engage with different communities. Or scholarly literature can be about any topic. It can be about Pokemon. If there are people who are doing research about this, and any other topic, and whoever is not in that field, they either find this strange or funny or whatever, but the research is taking place on all topics. And so again, there is an opportunity to engage with the people who are working on that, not as a subject of scholarly research, but as a subject on its own. And we can just provide additional information, and there we can actually overlap in terms of our curation workflows by, for instance, making sure that everybody has, in Wikidata terms, a statement regarding the first name, the surname, the gender, their country, their nationality, and these kind of things. That is of benefit to everyone, regardless which angle they are coming from. And so I think in this way, the literature is actually a vehicle that can be used to engage across many different domains.
Thanks.
Plus, everybody also needs references, and if the references are already in, it's much easier to actually use them.
What's the state of references in the Scholia project? So I imagine paper has topic, you wouldn't add a reference? Or
yeah, well, that's something that still needs to be worked out. Right now, we don't have automated fashions to do the topic annotation. So what people do is typically write a query. Give me all the basically publications that have string so-and-so or similar in their title, and then they tag it this way, trying to disambiguate between energy in this context and energy in that context and things like that. Also, if you then go to a Scholia profile, once you've done that, you can look at citations or like papers or works that are cited from the works that you've tagged this way, and then you typically find out further works that don't have your target word in the title, but are still relevant to the field. And so if you do that a few times, you can actually build a corpus. That's how those citation graphs and co-occurring topics graphs are being built. So first you use a rough approach, just looking for things that pop up in a title, and then you get more fine-grained. And yeah, in terms of referencing, it's still largely an open question. So many of the things that we pull in from external APIs, they're referenced to those external APIs, but things like the topic statement or like author statement, as opposed to the author name string, which we get from the external APIs, they are not really referenced right now. This is judgment by the editors. It's original research in Wikipedia terms. And I think to some extent we have to accept that. That's where the crowdsourcing, the citizen science actually happens. But streamlining that a bit more would certainly be useful.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Okay, then thank you very much again, Daniel.
Thank you.
So then we